Thank you for a nice introduction, Chairperson. So let me begin with the question. So the question is this: how to support growing elderly in the future, or not just growing elderly, any vulnerable population group. So there are only 4 ways. One is you rely on your work, so that means you work, or you work more, delay your retirement. Or you rely on your family, that means your grown-up children, or your BPS. Or you rely on the government, so social welfare or public transfers. Or when you are young, you save and you rely on your savings. So there are only 4 ways. There is no other way in the world. And for the last 12 or 13 years, a group of actually researchers tried to answer these questions. And for every country, I mean for 40 countries, those are called the member countries in our research. And we found some answers to some countries and some countries, but the answers are very different across countries. So I will show you some of the results today. So the topic today is pension reform, and there are concerns on population aging. And of course, one is under the pay-as-you-go system, there is a fiscal strain, and also too generous, pension probably encouraging workers to retire early. So many countries already talked about this reform. One is changing normal retirement age. Normal retirement age is, at that age you are eligible for full pension benefit. I'm actually 60. For me, it's 67. For Professor Gong Soo Lim, it must be 65, right? Because in the United States, actually, they changed it. So every 10 years, the normal retirement age increases by 1 year in the United States. And there are many other ways, like changing the replacement rate, like Ireland, Costa Rica. They changed the penalty in early retirement age and introducing DC. And also very interesting, like a pay-go nominal DC, which is called Sweden and Germany. So they actually include like life expectancy on your birth cert. So if we are the only one in your birth cert, everybody dies and you receive the pension benefit more than other courses, something like that. So many countries actually thought about many reforms, but they are basically actually lead to the same question: what's the impact? What's the economic impact? And how can what is the impact on labor? What is the impact on fiscal sustainability? And what is the impact on savings? Something like that. So I'll just talk on the changing normal retirement age today. So the research question is: what is the economic impact of pension reform or other social protection? So there are labor market responses and the fiscal sustainability or savings and maybe growth. But the paper shows that the economic impacts depends on type of pension reform, and especially population age structure, labor market responses, and most importantly, actually, the support system for the elderly. That means we looked at these 4 different types of support for the elderly. But if a country rely on transfers more than like savings, then the impact will be very different. So that's actually the whole point of today's presentation. So this is probably the most important kind of some provocative idea. So if we retire, then you rely on either transfer wealth, which is called WTP here, or pension wealth. Your pension wealth, that means if you retire, you either rely on assets like savings or rely on transfers. Transfers could be from a family or could be government, that's it. Because if you retire, there are only 3 ways to support your consumption, which is either family, government transfers, pay as you go, or your asset. But asset actually has, if you rely on more asset, then it has some implication for investment and growth, capital accumulation. But if you rely on more pay-as-you-go system or transfers, then it leads to low aggregate savings. That's the whole bottom line. So what happens is that actually population aging can lead to an accumulation of wealth if the country rely more on assets or savings rather than pay-as-you-go transfer systems. That's the kind of old story. So here we have like a high school math. So this tau is the ratio of your, so whether this is you need to rely either transfers or asset when you retire, and this is a percentage of people who rely on transfers, basically. So just a simple, R is a reform. I said a reform. So the derivative of this tau with respect to reform is just this. So that means your tau depends on, so tau changes. Like I said, if the country rely more on tau, that means more on transfers rather than savings, then they will lead to low capital accumulation. So here it depends on tau, 1 minus tau, and depends on how much their transfers actually changes system and how much their asset changes. Actually, this is very simple but very important actually formula. That means when there is a reform, whether the country rely on more transfers or not, how much they change, it depends on actually their level, initial level, tau, and how much the transfer system changes, how much their asset reliance changes. So the prediction, let's talk about prediction. So suppose a pension benefit reduces. Pension benefit reduces. That means transfers decline. So it decreases tau, simply. But suppose people, when there is a reduction in pension benefit, people may delay their retirement, right? If people delay their retirement, and then suppose, and think this way, suppose you live forever. You work until you die. You work until you die. Then you don't have to save. You don't have to save. That's about nine. So that means it increases tau because you reduce your asset, your saving. So that means the combined effect is ambiguous. Whether when there is a pension reform, whether people rely more on transfers or not, and whether it leads to a higher saving or not, is very ambiguous. So it depends on country effect, depends a lot on their tau, original level of tau, and change in transfer and change in assets. So I use, this is actually, there are some simulations, and it's backward recorded. It's not like CG model. It's very, very simple actually. Some simulations, and between 1950 to 2300, very long term, so assume some steady state. And then assume some sigma. Okay, what is sigma? This is actually important part. When government increase the normal retirement age, people do not delay their retirement one-to-one. In some countries, actually, people don't delay retirement, even though the normal retirement age changes. So in the literature, there are very few actually literature. This is very interesting actually question, but there are very few literature like Bertels and Murphy, Kruger and Pischke, Bloom, Canning, Masogoni, and the range is 0.1 to 0.2, very low. That means even though normal retirement age, the pension over age increases by 1 year, people delay their retirement by only 2 months. So, but I assume that actually, I mean, for Spain, actually, Mastroboni estimated for Spain is 0.6. I also estimate for Japan, it's a higher, it's 0.5. But it's not like 1-to-1. But this actually has some implication too. So I assume actually, in my simulation, I assume from 0, 0.2, or even 1. 1 means when government increase the normal retirement age by 1, everybody delay their retirement by 1 year. So what happens? So I use data. We need actually population projections up to 2030, 2300, which is from the UN World Population Prospect. And I use this National Transfer Accounts database, which is consistent NIPA. So actually, this is just data-driven research. What is the National Transfer Accounts? It has all, we estimate the age profiles. Age profiles for labor income, consumption, public transfers, tax profiles, public pension benefit contribution. So basically, we are creating some kind of age profile for economic indicators. Do you know any economic indicators by age? There is none. but the public policy is not age neutral. Anything like child benefit or pension benefit is not age neutral, but none of them is actually a national economic indicator. So in Korea, I'm working with actually Statistics Bureau to make some of the actually indicator as national official statistics. So about 40 countries in the world are participating, and about 200 researchers are working on this data set. So I'm actually Asian team leader. So we have all this information, and this is kind of a graph, this is indicator. So this is for population. So this is labor income and consumption for US. Don't ask me how you estimate this one, because there is a bunch of methodologies. The methodology is actually UN manual. We created the UN manual for this. So launched actually last month in Barcelona. So this is a net public transfer, and this is net pension transfers in the United States. So we have these profiles for many countries. So basically the idea is what happens if you increase the normal retirement age by 2 years, then net pension transfers move to the right-hand side. And there is a response from labor income. And we have to assume that consumption doesn't change, something like that. And if it changes, this is tau changes, because tau is the share of pension benefit among this life cycle deficit. So, for example, there are methodologies. So how do you actually delay retirement, for example? If you delay retirement for 2 years, in Indonesia, there is no effect on labor income. But in Germany, the impact is huge. So you wonder why. Because this is a delay in labor retirement means labor force participation. So the labor income is labor force participation, age-specific labor force participation times their productivity. So in Indonesia, their labor force participation is already high, but their productivity at elderly is very low. So even though you delay retirement, your labor income doesn't change much. But Germany is very different. Their productivity increases, it's almost flat. So even though basically labor productivity is measured by the labor income per worker, but the labor income per worker on the population doesn't change. So if you delay retirement, the impact is huge. Actually, Korea is very interesting because in Korea, many people actually say work more. But that kind of policy doesn't work at all, because according to our data, if we multiply the elderly productivity and multiply by the labor force participation, it looks like this. There are a lot of self-employed. So the policy worked in Germany or France never works in Korea, actually. Because Korea's somehow in the company, they kick out the workers at age 50. So a lot of them actually work self-employed, and their wage is so low, and their labor force participation is highest amongst the OECD countries, so it doesn't work. So you actually have to create this profile for every country and see whether this actually has an impact on income. And then, so we created this in this paper, I did it for only 7 countries, but of course I can do it for other 40 countries just with a matter of time. So this is actually impact on delaying retirement on labor income for 65 to 74. Obviously, labor income accounts for small portion of their consumption for the elderly. Why? Because they rely on their pension. So pension is a more important source of funding for consumption. And for developing countries, it's like 50%. That means actually for developing countries, labor is still very important source. However, if you look at the percentage, actually the percentage is higher for the developed countries, so it has more impact. You see Korea is actually kind of similar to India, because Koreans actually retire, from high earning sector, they retire very early. And they move to the very low productivity sector. This is a major problem. So that's actually impact of, so we have to shift to these old profiles, like pension profile. So pension profile like Google like this. So if you delay, if the country delay their normal retirement age by 2 years, then you shift the curve. So you shift the curve. For some countries, we actually measure the responsiveness, so it's everything about the responsiveness. So once you do that, you can calculate how much their pension the labor income changes after you delay your normal retirement age. And you can calculate what is the pension benefit as a percent of their life cycle deficit. That means after they retire, they need this resource, right? But what is the percentage of pension benefit? And of course, in European countries, it's like 70% or 80%, very high. And also Latin American countries, except for Mexico, they rely a lot on pension benefit. But the other countries like the US does not rely on much pension benefit. They rely on asset savings. So Social Security doesn't account for like more than 30 or 40%, very, very small. So you calculate this before and after, and remember this is fiscal impact, but this is percent decrease in pension benefit. It only depends on their life expectancy and their level of pension benefit. But this is as a percent of change in pension benefit, and you have information about how much the pension benefit is from out of GDP or budget, so you can multiply to the ratio of budget or the percentage of budget or percentage of GDP. Then of course in India it might be very, very small, right? Because fiscal impact might be very small because the pension benefit is a very small part of their budget, government budget, something like that. So you can calculate these numbers. Then, so there are, I mean, in the book, there are many different base simulation results. I don't have much time. I probably have 5 more minutes. So consider this original function, the formula. The formula is you either rely on asset or you rely on the transfers. And if you add the transfers, so if you add up asset and transfers, it becomes your consumption need after your retirement. That's called the WP. And there is a TK. TK is a transfer to kid. So actually in the whole population, you have to also consider how much resources are given to the kids. And then, so what you see is this asset. If you just focus on this asset needs to finance your consumption after retirement goes up. I mean, because of the aging. But in Korea, this is it's like this too. But in some countries, it changes because of the population changing. So basically, what this leads to, it depends on population aging, of course, because you need more asset or more transfers, and also the level of tau, how much the elderly rely on their transfers versus asset. So you can see Korea. Let's take a look at Korea. So Korea, this is let's take a look at just this. This is transfers for kids. It increases. Why? Because after Korean War, there is a baby booming. So because of baby booming, there is a lot of transfers to children, but that actually ends in early 1960s. It's very consistent with actually the historical observation. Then it decreases. So number of children declines so rapidly here between 1990 and the year 2000, and it stabilized. How about the pension needs? Pension means actually the wealth to the elderly. It increases because the life expectancy increases and the high saving rate, but it actually peaked in 1980 and declines. Why? Because it's called actually the demographic dividend. The number, because of the fertility declines and the number of workers actually increased, so this is relative. So in the society, the number of actually workers, working population increases, then this ratio declines and start to decline. So it looks like that. So this is actually, this observation, I mean this historical trend is consistent with what we observed in Korea history. Now, so the last slide is this. Now, this is baseline tau. So what is tau? Tau 75%. That means in this country, Costa Rica, elderly, the pension accounts for 75% of their support for the elderly. The other 25% is saving. So elderly rely on saving by 25% and transfers 74.5%. So Germany, all these countries very high, right? And Japan, it's about 75%. And the elderly rely on their saving or assets by 25, the other 25%. So if government increase the normal retirement age, sigma equals 0, that means the workers do not respond. So workers do not delay their retirement to zero. Then what happens is the assets actually increases, should increase. I mean, this is like a saving need. Why? Because your normal retirement age increases, so your pension benefit is gone, so you have to rely on your saving, basically. How about sigma equals 1? That means pension benefit, I mean, your normal retirement age increases by 2 years, then everybody delay their retirement by 2 years. Then you don't have to rely on your saving, so it decreases substantially. What if it's 0.2? That's actually very plausible. 0.2 is very plausible. So when the government increased normal retirement age by 1 year, people delay their retirement by 2 months on average. Then what happens is the impact depends on the country. It depends on the level of Tau, the level of the change in transfers and asset. So in some countries it increases, some countries decreases, and you might be interested in Korea. In Korea, what happens is the impact is about negative 3%. So that means the saving need decreases when government increases normal retirement age and the workers respond to that by 20%, about 20%, then the saving need decreases a little bit. But the impact is not that big, it's about 3%. So let me please summarize. The concluding remark is that so the increase in normal retirement age raises the asset to labor income ratio, but delaying retirement lowers it. But like I said, if we have this data, the data is all different by country. So the impact depends on the country's support system, their labor income profiles, consumption profiles, and all that. Especially the labor productivity of older people. Like I said, even though workers increase their labor force participation, it has no impact, very little impact in developing countries or even Korea, because their productivity of older people is low. And then it also depends on their public pension system. So under realistic assumptions, the combined effect will raise it, but in Korea it decreases it a little bit. But we need more study of this because it's just assumption, like 0.2, 0.1. But it has some implication. You can actually easily find, if you read the paper, the direction of the savings and growth and fiscal, the impact. So you can actually easily find it. Qualification, we need more country data, of course, and relax assumptions and crowding out. There is actually some assumptions on PQS and also. So I think that's my 20 minutes, so thank you very much.